for so long that they had to create a title for me. I am now called member at large. Nobody really knows what that means, but I kind of like the name. So if you look at the program booklet, it says member at large and treasurer. I'm a lawyer, I don't do numbers, so I don't know what it means to be treasurer. Anyway, so I've been tasked with introducing somebody that we already know. So I thought to myself, what is the best way to reintroduce Babak Yusuf Zade? And I thought to myself, well, you know, I could just rehash his resume, but that wouldn't be very fun. Or I could roast him, which would be amazing. It would be amazing. Sadly, I thought of, you know, quickly, our esteemed NorCal president, she's getting heartburn right now, heard about it, and she quickly put an end to it, so I had to, you know, I'm gonna have to ad-lib, so here we go. So, we all know Babak, right? Babak is what I call a badass, pardon my French, and I'll tell you why. Babak is, first and foremost, well, I don't know about first and foremost, but his job, his regular job, he's a partner at a big law firm, Shepherd Mullen. For those of you who don't know, Shepherd Mullen is an esteemed law firm. It's a major law firm, and he's a partner there, and he, because of that, he works 24/7. I don't know how he has the time to do anything else. And yet somehow, he decided to be IABA national president. Not this year, not last year, not the year before, but for the last 4 years. And if you guys don't know what the IABA national president is, it's a nearly an impossible job. Not only does he have his own board, he's also on our NorCal board. He has to deal with 8 chapters, and he has to deal with a barrage of attacks on the civil rights of Iranian Americans. And by the way, he has to manage IABA's how many lawsuits, Babak? 2 or 3 lawsuits now? Just one lawsuit. Babak can tell you about the lawsuits that we have against the Trump administration because of the travel ban. As you guys all know, as Buzz told us, the travel ban overwhelmingly affects our community. Anyway, so he's IABA national president. He's a partner at a big law firm. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you guys knew this. He doesn't put this on his resume, but he's also retranslating Robayat Khayyam. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but Omar Khayyam is an 11th century Persian mathematician, astronomer, and poet, okay? And he has this beautiful Robayat that's about love, about life, and probably about the IABA too, I don't know. I mean, Babak knows, I mean, he's translating right now, so keep an eye out. The translation's coming out soon. I've read some of the translations. It's better than Fitzgerald translations. They're no good. So Babak, let us know when the translation comes out. They're fantastic. Okay, so let's recap real quick. IABA national president, partner at a big law firm, translator of classical Persian poetry from the 11th century. Oh, and by the way, he also finds time to be a mentor for people like me, member at large, of course. And he gives us wisdom, he gives us guidance, he tells us like what law firm go to and all that good stuff. And I thought about this. I was like, how did Babak become such a badass? I was stunned, and then I realized it's not you, Babak. Sorry. It's because of the amazing Iranian American IABA attorneys that have come before us, like Judge Ida Bonisani, who has paved the path for Iranian Americans to go to the judiciary, or for people like Nikki Moore. Where are you, Nikki? Without Nikki Moore, ladies and gentlemen, none of us would be here. She started the NorCal chapter. So without her, we wouldn't be here. So thank you so much, Nikki. We really, really appreciate it. And of course, I can't deny it's all the other Iranian American attorneys that were first generation Iranian Americans that came here, learned the language, became lawyers, and paved the path for success for us. So before Babak gets up here and gives us an amazing speech, no pressure, Babak. Don't mess up. I'd like you guys to remember that none of this stuff happened by accident. Okay, you guys are not here on accident. It's because of the amazing work of the Iranian American attorneys that have dedicated their time, that have gone above and beyond to make this for our community, to educate our community, to help our community succeed, to unify our community, and to ensure that we're on the path to prosper. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you IABA National President, Babak Yusuf Zade.
My understanding is that you can't be presidential without a podium. Now we have a podium. Wow. I don't really know what to say. That was quite impressive. And I know that I've apologized numerous times for Hani making notes, jokes, but now I kind of miss the fact that he didn't. All right, so thank you, Hani. That was probably nicer than you should have been. Okay, first welcome to all of you here looking out at this crowd, and to Elika and the Northern California chapter's testament. This is truly the largest crowd we've ever had, I dare say, not just for Northern California, but for IABA National. So well done to all of you. This is impressive. Mark Twain once wrote, "Apparently there is nothing that cannot happen today." I think he meant it a little bit more optimistically than I take that quote today. But these days I wake up and I think to myself, what's going to happen today? Increasingly the answer is apparently literally anything. The news is filled with one bombshell after another, any one of which 10 or 15 years ago would probably upended our lives. But today they come in rapid fire. And this reality-bending infotainment, which seems to fill our daily lives day after day, has a very unfortunate consequence. The consequence is that it leads to a numbing and an exhaustion of dealing with the day-to-day affairs of the insanity. That leads to a normalization of that insanity. And that in turn leads to an acquiescence. After 2 years, I see it in my colleagues, I see it in my friends, and I see it in this community. The outrage at these policies that existed just a year ago is muted. And I often see responses from people in this community that went from, "I can't believe this is happening," to, "Well, what can you do?" Our filters and our actions are slowly starting to reflect an acquiescence to what's happening. I don't blame people. I think that's the normal response in the face of 2 years of insanity flying at you. But I want to remind you that this is not normal. And I want to remind you that we still need action. And if you need proof, just think about the last few months. You don't have to think very far. Of course, we have the travel ban that, believe it or not, permanently separates most of you from loved ones in Iran and many other countries, from their loved ones in their countries. But you could look past that. It's the grinding of a halt of the acceptance of refugees. It's the normalization of attacks on women, be it politically or physically, apparently. The normalization of attacks on the judiciary. It's the stripping of their children from their parents at the borders, and in some instances, putting them in what can only be described as fenced cages. want you to think about that for a moment. Think about the pictures that you saw of children in fenced cages separated at the border. And think about when else that happened. If you'll permit me a timely metaphor, this is not over. We are very much still in the path of the storm. Unlike Florence and Maria before it, this is not a storm of wind and water, but it is equally devastating for each of us. This is a storm of bigotry, of bias, of racism, of sexism, of xenophobia, of Islamophobia, of a constant barrage of fear and division. Like a real storm, it creates chaos, and it lashes out at everybody in its path. Like a real storm, it separates people from their belongings. How? Well, a lot of entities taking guidance from the government's policies, or just using the government as an example, have decided that they were just going to freeze the assets, the bank accounts of Iranians or Iranian Americans living here lawfully, just based on their nationality. Like a real storm, it separates people from their homes, because those same people can no longer access their bank accounts to pay their rent and their mortgage. Like a real storm, it separates people from schools and from work, because other institutions have decided that they're going to revoke their job offers and they're going to revoke admissions to any school on the basis of people's nationality. And like a real storm, this one separates all of us from our loved ones. Whether it be by government policy or by force at the borders, they are separating parents from their children, grandparents from their grandchildren, spouses, fiancés, people who need medical attention. Like a real storm, sadly, often the most vulnerable are those who do not heed the warnings, who either underestimate the effects of the storm or believe that somehow it will not affect them personally. I want to remind you that this storm is not normal. There's a lot that you can do. Like a real storm, there are steps that we can take to mitigate and to minimize its effects, and as needed to clean up a little bit afterwards and prepare to rebuild. Just like you would set sandbags, or you might shore up a home, or you might board up the windows, or you might come in afterwards and clean up. We too can take action to slow the flood of the insanity at our doors, and to clean up afterwards as needed. I'm proud to say that in 2018, IABA was at the forefront of these efforts. And this Northern California chapter was often in the forefront of IABA's efforts. I want to just give you a handful of examples of what we've accomplished just in 2018. When this issue of the travel ban was in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, IABA and its coalition partners, helped by PARS and by PAIA, we submitted an amicus brief in support of Hawaii's case. Out of 80 amicus briefs submitted to the U.S. Supreme Court, it was the only one cited to, on the record, and discussed by Justice Breyer. And it wasn't just referenced, it was discussed for minutes. And then, when he dissented, he again cited to the amicus brief, identifying the impact of the travel ban, and in particular its waiver provisions, the fig leaf buzz that we'll come back to, that it had on the lives of people that we had highlighted for them. And by the way, we didn't just highlight the Iranian American community, although we did do that more than anybody else, but also the other impacted communities. Now I want you to think about that just for a second. Look at the achievement it takes for us to submit a brief that, even if to a small, tiny amount, actually influenced a U.S. Supreme Court justice. That is something that you probably did not foresee, but you paved the road for. In the wake of the terrible US Supreme Court decision that, as Marika said, happened to, I guess, not unlike Korematsu before it, memorialize discrimination into our law, we decided to hold a town hall to describe to the people and explain to them what had happened and what the next steps were. And the steps weren't over, because just after that, we did in fact file a new lawsuit, a class action lawsuit, challenging the implementation of the travel ban and its waiver provisions. Now, just in case you guys don't understand what that means, the ban permanently bans us and our not us here, but our families from Iran and from 4 other countries from ever coming into this country. But the fig leaf, Buzz, that you mentioned, that was offered to the Supreme Court as well, it's not a real ban because we've got a case-by-case waiver. And we'll grant these waivers when people need them and they can come into this country. Well, you might imagine that those waivers were not forthcoming the way we thought, although they were definitely forthcoming the way I thought. And now we have a new class action lawsuit challenging it in the Western District of Washington. If the government used the fig leaf to promise waivers, we're going to hold them accountable. They're going to give us waivers. We worked there afterwards with Pars and Paya, and spearheaded by Paya, we actually worked with Senators Flake and Van Hollen, who was actually truly spearheading this problem. And we managed to get from the US government the only publicly available statistics on the waivers. It was no surprise that the numbers were dismal. In the first 3 months out of tens of thousands of requests, how many waivers do you think were granted? 2. In the months thereafter, it wasn't. They improved. They managed to get up to 2%. But 98 out of 100 waivers were still being denied. And by the way, we don't know how many visas were actually granted. We just know that they granted the waivers. Afterwards, we've met with elected officials, including most recently with Leader Pelosi, to discuss the travel ban and issues affecting our community. We've presented MCLEs with coalition partners on how to deal with the travel ban, even just MCLEs to attorneys who represent people who have been affected by the travel ban. We've hosted community forums. We've hosted Know Your Rights. There's a long list, and that's, by the way, just this year, but if you're interested in knowing, the second to last page of your program will give you a much more detailed list of what we've been up to in the past year. And I have to say that much of these efforts were not possible without the help of our coalition partners. Paya and Pars and NIAC and AILA and NILC and ALC and IRAP, and not to forget our pro bono counsel, Arnold Porter, Lane Powell, Marianne Scallett. It truly takes a team effort. And it was the same reason that Mayor Breed was here today. Right? Injustice against one of us is injustice against all of us. And the only way we stop it is by standing together. And by the way, it's not all backward looking. For the first time ever, we are discussing the creation of a legal defense fund, a separate entity that will represent and advance and protect the rights of Iranian Americans in this country. Every minority community in this country that has ever hit a certain growth has created a legal defense fund, and we are literally on the precipice. But we can't do this work alone. We need each and every one of you in this room and all the people that you know that are not in this room. I'm going to tell you a little bit of what you can do. The first thing that you can do, if you're really feeling inspired, get involved with the board. Right now, too few people carry too many of the burdens of this community. Get involved, help. You don't want to get on the board, you want to do something less than that, then just donate your time. You're able to translate, you're able to bring your specialty, whether it be in immigration or employment law or a host of other things. Donate that time if you can. You don't want to donate your time, donate your money. We are constantly restrained by what we can do for our community based on the funds that we have available. And by the way, each and every one of the people that were here and talking today are volunteers. This is the only organization, well, I don't know about the only one, but it's the only one I know of that takes $0 out. Everyone has a day job and everyone donates their time. Everything that you give to IABA goes to the causes of the community. If you want to do something less than that, just become members or renew your membership. I'm not going to ask you guys to raise your hands, but I'm willing to bet if I ask right now how many of you are members or how many of you checked whether or not your memberships are recent or new or renewed. Be a little bit of hesitation in this room. It's not that hard. It takes you 5 minutes. Just pay your membership dues, and a lot of our operating expenses actually just come out of that. And if you just want to be sort of at your minimal level, then at the very least, get on our social media, get on our website, and when we distribute information that you can share with the community, then at least distribute that. A lot of times that information makes big differences for people between knowing and not knowing, between seeking their legal rights and not. And besides supporting our efforts, for God's sake, make your voices heard. I can't tell you how many times we've been in front of elected officials that keep telling us, I didn't even realize there was an organized Iranian-American community out there. Feinstein told us last year, this is the first time in 20-something years you guys have ever been in front of me. Some of the blame may lie with others, but some of it certainly lies with us. Make your voices heard. There's an election coming up. If any of you had any doubts that elections have consequences, I hope that's been erased. Get out and vote. Encourage everyone you know to get out and vote. And support other organizations. There are a lot of other organizations in this room that do really good work. Find one that inspires you and support them. Whatever you do, do not sit on the sidelines. This is your moment to act, to get up and be counted. Not enjoyment and not sorrow is our destined end or way, but to act that each tomorrow find us farther than today. In the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dumb, driven cattle. Be a hero in the strife. Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime and then departing leave behind us footprints in the sands of time. Let us then be up and doing with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing. Learn to labor and to wait. Repeat to yourself every day, starting tomorrow in the face of this insanity, this is not normal. Like a mantra, over and over to yourself, this is not normal. And then, as Longfellow urged, act with a heart for any fate. If you do, I promise you, tomorrow will find us a little farther than today. Now, speaking of people that are acting and pursuing, I want to give a little bit of credit to all the people that made this happen tonight. So, with that said, the Northern California Board, please come on up. Everyone up here deserves recognition. This board has toiled harder and more and has worked with me on national more than almost any other chapter. And every single one of them deserves some recognition. Come on up, guys. Under Elika's leadership, this chapter is thriving, it's doing wonderful. You guys are amazing. You help my life and make it a lot easier. Thank you so much for your work. The Northern California Board, thank you.
All right, I get to close the formal portion of the evening and just want to echo again, many thanks for Babak's leadership, Hani's leadership, who for years has poured so much dedication into the community and shown me the ropes of IABA. So thank you, Hani. And of course, echoing thanks for our founders, Nikki Khojasmir, Nahal, Jaji Arvanisani, thank you for everything. We hope this evening provided some space to reflect, motivated you to get more engaged with IABA and across the board, motivated you to become members if you're not. Public Defender Adachi, we're so excited you came to our dinner for the first time and are fighting for immigrant rights. But other folks who are not members, please do join and follow Babak's map of the ways that we can get involved. So thank you so much for coming, and now we have dancing and more music. The bar is going to be open for